Hello and welcome back to another episode of Bitesize Cinema. I'm your host RJ McCready, and for this episode I'm going to be taking you guys back to the year in 1971 to look at Gene Wilder's iconic cult classic musical Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So let's go to that factory, let's play you guys a trailer, and I'll see you soon.
From the pen of author Roald Dahl to the motion picture screen comes a most unusual chocolate factory and the mysterious candy man inside.
I'm so glad you could come. This is going to be such an exciting day.
Gene Wilder is the mythical candy man Willy Wonka, and he's opening his factory gates for 5 lucky children who find a golden ticket. Our hero Charlie Bucket wants his golden chance more than anyone.
Open it, Charlie. Let's see that golden ticket.
Wouldn't that be fantastic? It's not fair to raise his hope.
Never mind. Go on, open it, Charlie. I want to see that gold.
Stop it, Dad.
I've got the same chance as anybody else, haven't I?
Eat your way through the chocolate room. Take a ride on the Burke-powered Wonkamobile. Float around the bubbly fizzy lifting room. Sail down the chocolate river on the SS Wonkatania. Step on the Wonkavator and go through the roof. Destination, the scrumdiddly-yumptious world of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Rated G.
And welcome back, guys. So the synopsis for this film is a poor but hopeful boy seeks one of the 5 coveted golden tickets that will send him on a tour of Willy Wonka's mysterious chocolate factory. It's got a 100-minute runtime and it's a family fantasy musical. It was directed by Mel Stewart, and looking at his biography, this is his main feature, this is the film that he's most famous for, and it was backed by Paramount Pictures with a $3 million budget. The film is based on the cult classic 1964 novel of the similar name, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which was written by Roald Dahl, who is a legend himself. And he is a British novelist, short story writer, poet, screenwriter and wartime fighter pilot. And his books have sold 250 million copies worldwide, and every one of them are iconic and they're familiar in the children's world, certainly familiar when I was growing up at school. You got James and the Giant Peach, Matilda, The Witches, The Fantastic Mr. Fox, The BFG, The Twits, and one of my favourites, which is George's Marvellous Medicine. That was a classic. And he also wrote books for adults as well, which was The Tales of the Unexpected, which was turned into a TV show in the late 70s, early 80s, and that was creepy. That was really creepy. It was spooky. I seem to remember the intro music just being incredibly haunting. So if you like that sort of horror, sort of 70s TV shows and you haven't seen it, go check that out. You might want to hide behind the sofa for some of those episodes. I think I did when I was a kid. And he also wrote a short story about gremlins, which would later be turned into a movie by Joe Dante and Steven Spielberg. And one of the reasons why he wrote about the gremlins is going back to his fighter pilot days, is because the fighter pilots back in World War II used to blame these gremlin creatures for the malfunctions in the aeroplane engines. So there's a little bit of trivia there on that. And talking about films, he also did some screenplays to some iconic movies from Hollywood. He did the screenplay to James Bond, You Only Live Twice. And he also did the screenplay to Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So he was a busy guy, clever guy, jack of all trades, I guess you could say. But going back to the main feature and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, there is a reason why it's called that and not Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And one of those reasons is because Roald Dahl was not happy with this film. And one of the reasons why he wasn't happy, and this is all research which I've done on the internet and stuff like that, guys, is because he was employed as a screenwriter, did the screenplay to the film. The director took a look at it and then he hired another screenwriter, which is David Seltzer, and this guy wrote The Omen. And he tinkered around with Roald Dahl's final script, he changed a few things, and Roald Dahl wasn't aware of this until the film got filmed and wrapped up and cut and everything, until he actually watched it and went, hang on a second, this wasn't the actual screenplay that I wrote. And he refused to give permission for them to go and make the sequel to this film, which is The Great Glass Elevator, which I've been waiting for a long time. And I believe this is the other reason why the title was changed to Willy Wonka instead of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, because of Roald Dahl saying that, you know, it's not what I was told, and it's not the screenplay that I gave you guys to go and make. So I kind of get that if, you know, he wasn't informed and stuff like that. But then, having said that, being familiar with this book when I was growing up, I think this film is a great adaptation of the story. I don't know anybody that doesn't like this film. It's cult, it's classic, it's fun, it's quotable, the songs are great. If I bring up Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, people immediately start to sing these songs and you engage in a great conversation about it. And I think it has just captured that magic that Roald Dahl was trying to put into his book. So it's funny how him as a writer, and I kind of respect that, if that is his, you know, his vision that he didn't feel like was right, but it's captured the magic from the book onto the screen, and I loved it when I was a kid, and now my kids love it. And I was talking to my kids about this the other day, saying I was doing this film, and they said, yeah, Dad, I love that film, it's great, you know. And we was singing the songs, we was quoting the lines such as that scene when Mike TV asked Wonka what that machine is, and he says it's a Wonka washer, and he says, what is that? And he goes, it's Wonka washer spelled backwards. So it's just classic, it's just one of the many lines in this movie. So there you go, guys, that's how Willy Wonka got produced. And it's worth mentioning now, actually, that when it was released back in 1971, it didn't do very well at the box office, but it did very well on the VHS rental. It's one of those films that did very well in that market, and it has now become a cult classic, and I think it eventually made its money back in the rental market. So let's have a look at the cast of this movie. So you've got Gene Wilder playing Willy Wonka, and I can see anybody else but Gene Wilder play this part now. He does a great job of this. The other people that were in line to play Wonka was Ron Moody, who is famous for playing Fagin in the musical version of Oliver Twist, and you also had a Doctor Who that was lined up to play this, which was John Pertwee, and the comedian Spike Milligan. But like I say, guys, I really can't see anybody else but Gene Wilder do this role, because he does an incredible job. He's not in your face funny. He manages to blend this Willy Wonka character to being comedic, but he has this balance of menace and mystery about him as well. And I think Gene Wilder really does a good job of that. And he got this role on the spot when he went for an audition. He just walked in. I think he was just himself, and the director for the film said, "Yeah, that you are Willy Wonka." And even when Gene Wilder walked out of the room, the director ran down the hallway and said, "You're hired. You got the job." But Gene Wilder didn't accept it immediately. He actually replied by saying, "Well, I will do this on one condition." And this is great. I didn't know this, but it's one of those things that is right in front of you, but you just don't see it at the time. And what it is that when you first meet Wonka and he comes walking out and he's got his walking stick and he's got his limp, he rolls over and then he just goes, "Surprise, it was just me playing around." And what he said is, Gene Wilder said, is that I will pretend that I've got a limp and then I haven't. And then he said, the reason why I've done this, for the rest of the movie, you won't know whether I'm being serious or whether I'm lying. So that's a really good bit of character preparation from, you know, Gene Wilder there, and he pulls this off throughout the whole movie and all the way through the film. And it's right what he said there, that basic mechanic of Wonka throughout this whole film is, one minute he's being serious and the next minute he's like, "Hang on, stop, rewind, okay, let's go forwards." You know what I mean? It's great, it's brilliant, I love it. And I think that is what is, again, I've said this before in the episodes, Willy Wonka is the heart of this movie, and Charlie is the engine. He's driving it forward, and it's much like what I said in the last episode with Labyrinth. It's very similar in a way, is that Wonka is like Bowie, King Giraffe, and Charlie is like Sarah. So you've got that same sort of mechanic there. And ultimately, when you look at Willy Wonka, it is a story about him teaching these guys, these horrible sport kids, a lesson, which I'll get into later on. But there you go, that is the main driving mechanic of this story, which I think is great. And then on top of that driving mechanic, which I said there between Wonka and Charlie and it all moving forward, is all the other greatness of this film. The songs, the songs in this film, they're iconic. You can sing along to them, like I said, when you bring this film up, you immediately start saying, the Candyman song at the beginning, or the Pure Imagination song when they're, the kids are first introduced to his factory, which is, again, that's worth mentioning as well. When they see that factory for the first time, their reactions on their face. Now, that is a spontaneous reaction because they hadn't seen that movie set. So what you see there is their first initial reaction, which is great. And throughout the rest of the film, it is like that. Gene Wilder held his cards very close to his chest. People didn't know what he was going to do. So the actors' reactions, what you see on screen, is for real. And talking about the driving mechanics of this film, let's talk about some of the trivia. There's some great trivia here. So they actually used 150 gallons of water and chocolate and cream for that scene of the chocolate river, the waterfall that you see. Augustus Gloop starts drinking from it. So that is all mixed up chocolate and cream, and after a time it started to go off, and apparently it smelled awful by the end of the movie as well. Yeah. And the scene by the end of the film when you're in Wonka's office, they didn't want the office just to be normal, plain and bland. They thought, well, we can't have it where this character's done all these things just to be in a normal office. So I said, let's just cut everything in half. So that's the reason why they did that. So that's quite a clever scene there with that. And it was filmed in Munich in Germany. And the reason why they did that is because Munich looks very oldie-wolty. It's like got a real sort of terracotta, stone cobbled streets, and they really try to capture that sort of Roald Dahl imagination in his books. And I've been to Munich, and when I've walked around I thought, oh yeah, it is, it's got that real sort of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory vibe to it when you go out there. And they purposely cut back on the use of vehicles in this film, so you can't really put your finger on what sort of timeline this is on, which is quite clever, and it kind of captures that. It's kind of got a funny, I guess you could say, comic book vibe to it, this film, because now I've read that and they purposely cut back on the use of cars, and you can't really sort of say where this is set, or with the clothes that are in, it's sort of in the 70s. It's obviously filmed in the 70s, but again they've just captured that sort of magic. I'm actually lost it. I can't really explain it, do you know what I mean? It's you could probably hear in my voice, guys, this is how this film leaves you, do you know what I mean? And I think this is why this film's cult classic, and it really has captured something. So yeah, I can't explain it, guys, really, I'm lost. So if you can tell me, let me know. Just post something on on the Facebook page or something. So, but anyway, it's filmed out in Munich. So if you are out in Munich, go and check out these sets. You can go and see them, or you can see the film locations. It's a lot of fun. So Jenny Dawn Cole, she plays the character of Veruca Saltz, and she was nothing like her character, apparently. She was horrible, that character, Veruca. But the actress herself, she was wonderful. She was lovely, and everybody said you are nothing like her. So, and apparently she drew inspiration from some of the girls she used to go to school with. Apparently, who weren't very nice. So there you go. And just the last bit of trivia here, guys, before going to the review of the movie. Willy Wonka's costume sold back in, I think it's about 2015. It sold for $74,000. And this is one of Marilyn Manson's favourite movies. So there you go. So he drew some inspiration from Willy Wonka. So there you go, guys. There's some trivia. There's some production. That's how this film got put together. That's the magic of this film. So let's have a look at this film. Let's do a bite-sized review of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So the film starts in a small town. You're introduced to Charlie Bucket, who is a poor paper boy, and he's watching all the kids going into a candy shop. And this is where you get our first song of the Candyman. It's a pretty cool song. And then you see Charlie's walking home, and he walks past Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. And whilst he stood by the gates, he meets a mysterious tinker who recites a line from a William Allingham poem, and it was called The Fairies, apparently, this poem. And he says to Charlie, nobody goes in and nobody comes out. And it's quite a creepy scene, actually. It really creates this sort of creepy vibe when you look at the factory. It's almost like the factory is like a character itself. And then Charlie runs home to his bedridden grandparents. You meet Grandpa Joe and his widowed mother. And poor old Charlie, God bless him, he comes home with a loaf of bread which he's spent his paper round money on to try and help his family out. And that night Charlie talks to his Grandpa Joe and he says to him that he visited the factory today, and then this is where Grandpa Joe tells Charlie that Willy Wonka closed the factory down because he had a rival called Slugworth who was trying to steal his secret recipe, so he closed it down, he wouldn't let anybody else in. And to this day nobody knows how he is producing his chocolate. And then the next day Wonka announces his 5 golden tickets, and he says that he's hidden them in his bars of chocolate, the Wonka bar, and he says that the finders will have a grand tour of his factory and will receive a lifetime supply of chocolate. And very quickly the first 4 tickets are found by the glutinous Augustus Gloop, the very, very spoilt Veruca's Salt, whose father does a great job in this, who's played by Roy Kinnear, the late Roy Kinnear. Unfortunately, he passed away on set of the Four Musketeers, which I forgot to mention actually. I've forgot to mention some of the cast members, more importantly the guy who plays Charlie Bucket, just on a little bit of a side note there, guys, coming away from the review. So you've got Peter Ostrom, who plays Charlie, and this was his only acting role. He went on to go and become a vet after this. Jack Olberston, he's done quite a few films in the past leading up to this. He plays Grandpa Joe, and obviously Roy Kinnear, as I just mentioned there, and Julie Dawn Cole, who plays Veruca's Salt. So it's just to name some of the cast there. But going back to the review, because I skipped that bit from earlier, I think I got caught up with the greatness of Gene Wilder, but there you go. Going back to the movie, so yeah, there's 4 kids that have found, 4 horrible kids that have found the golden tickets, and there's still one floating around. And oops, I forgot to mention the other kids there as well, guys. I'm not even going to edit this, I'm just going to let this flow, so this is just me being spontaneous now. So the other kids here, you've got the daughter of a wealthy business car salesman, Violet, who is a chewing gum expert, and the last kid here, you've got Mike TV, who is stuck on the TV, and his dad said, yep, you can have a gum when you're 12, kid. So there you go. But each time one of these kids finds a golden ticket, you get a mysterious man turn up in a trench coat and a hat, and he whispers something into their ear and you can't hear what he says. And with 1 ticket remaining, these tickets really have taken the world by storm. People are doing everything they can to find the ticket. You've got a woman whose husband's been kidnapped. And this is quite a funny scene because you've got the police talking to her, doing a negotiation with the kidnappers, and they say, well, they want your sort of supply of Wonka bars, and she sort of goes, oh. And that's it, it just sort of cuts. You can sort of see her reaction there. And then you got some scientist dude who says he's got this machine, he's going to tell him, and it doesn't go the way he wants it to. The machine basically tells him, I'm not going to tell you. So you've got some comedy elements here. And then you get a news report where the final golden ticket is found in South America, and it's a millionaire casino owner who's found the ticket. And this upsets Charlie. It's quite a sad scene. You get a scene here where you got his mum sing another song called Cheer Up Charlie, and this moves into the next day where the world is kind of calmed down, and Charlie goes back to his paper rounds, and he goes to the candy shop, and whilst he's walking there he finds a silver dollar in the gutter, and he picks it up and he decides to buy himself some candy. Goes into the shop, and the candy store owner gives him a scrumdiddlyumptious, I think that's how you pronounce it. And then just for old time's sakes, he says, how about a good old-fashioned Wonka bar? And he says, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll take that. So Charlie takes it, and as he walks outside, there's a group of news reporters shouting and screaming and saying that this guy in South America is a fake, and there's still 1 golden ticket floating around. So finding out this news, Charlie unwraps the Wonka bar, and to his surprise, he has the golden ticket, and he's waving it up in the air, and the news reporters see him. And then his paper round guy says, run Charlie, run home and don't stop. And you get Charlie running home. And then he gets stopped by Slugworth. He just turns up, this mysterious character. He's almost sort of creepy in a way. And then this is where you find out what he's been telling the other kids. And what he said to them is that when you go to the factory, get me an everlasting gobstopper because I want to find out the recipe for it. And he says, if you do that, I will give you money to your family and you'll never be poor for the rest of your life. And then Charlie gets home with all excitement and he chooses his Grandpa Joe to join him on this venture to the chocolate factory. And this is where you get another song here. It's where Grandpa Joe gets out of bed for the first time in 20 years. And then the next day you're outside the chocolate factory, you've got a crowd of people with a brass band, everybody's excited, all the kids turn up, and this is where you meet Mr. Wonka for the first time, and it's that bit that I mentioned at the beginning of the show where he limps out and then he rolls over. And then you've got Veruca Saltz who runs to the front of the queue and she goes, oh Dad, I want to be the first in, This is where you get Wonka come out and say, oh, Mr. Saltz, what a wonderful daughter you've got, you know what I mean? It's great. And then everybody comes through and straight away Wonka goes, right, so much time, such little to do, let's go. And he takes them inside the factory and he gets everybody to write the contract, which has some small print on it. And when you've got some small print on there, it is just comic genius where the writing just gets smaller and smaller. And someone comes out and says, oh, I need to answer a question. And he goes, all questions must be submitted via an envelope and sent to the factory. Right, let's move on. Do you know what I mean? It is. And then you've got the hands on the wall that take the coats and the hats, and one grabs Grandpa Joe's hat, and then the woman screams, and then Wonka comes out and goes, no, it's all right, it's okay. Let's keep moving on. Everything will become apparent. Let's go. And then everybody walks into a room with Wonka, and he's walking up a corridor, and he starts to get bigger. And then this is where Mr. Saltz comes out and goes, are you having a laugh, Wonka, like this? And he goes, why, are you having fun? It's like, everybody's crouched down. They've become bigger in this corridor, and he gets to this door and he says, once you get past this door, you get into this room, and everything in this room you can eat. And then this week Augustus Gloop comes out and goes, let me in, I'm starving. And then the door opens up, everybody turns back to that normal size, and they go into the candy room and the chocolate factory, and it's a magic scene, great scene. And you get Gene Wilder singing that classic song, World of Pure Imagination. It's just brilliant. It's probably the pinnacle of this movie, where everybody's running around and they're eating the flowers made of candy. But there's one character that just wants that little bit more, and there's good old Augustus Gloop, and he's drinking from the chocolate river. And this is where Mr. Wonka goes, no, you must not drink from the river, it's contaminated, I'm going to have to change it all now. And then as he walks over to him, Augustus Gloop falls into the river, and then he gets sucked up through this tube. And this is where Mr. Gloop goes, oh my god, what's going on? And he goes, and then Mr. Wonka goes, stop, panic. And then everybody's watching Augustus getting sucked through this tube, which takes him to the fudge room. And this is where Wonka gets one of the Oompa Loompas to take Mrs. Gloop to the fudge room so then his boy can be recovered. And I've kind of skipped a little bit here because before this you get Mr. Wonka. He tells them about the Oompa Loompas and the story of where they come from. A mysterious place in the world where they're being attacked by the Wang Doodle. And then Wonka takes them onto a riverboat ride, which is a real creepy scene. It really is. I mean, every time I watch it, it's borderline like a horror movie when he goes through and he starts singing a song. Everybody's getting creeped out. You're getting flashing images of like a spider and a chicken getting its head cut off. It really is a grim scene. And apparently the actors, or the kid actors in real life, were creeped out by this scene as well, because Gene Wilder's acting was so convincing that they couldn't tell whether he was acting or whether he was just being freaky or what. And again, this is the spontaneity of the actor's reaction in this film, and it's real. It's like they're not even acting. These guys are actually being scared. And so then the boat stops and they arrive at the inventing room, and this is where they come across a everlasting gobstopper to where each and every one of these kids receives one. But also being invented is a chewing gum, which is of the interest of Violet, and she can't resist, and on the instructions of Mr. Wonka he tells her not to, but she does, and she eats the chewing gum. And as a result, she turns into a blueberry, and you get a funny scene here where he goes, "Violet, you turn in violet." And then you get the Oompa Loompas, they come out, they take her to a squeezing room, and then they sing another song, and it's about the moral of a story of being greedy and all that type of stuff. So the remaining group, they walk on, they come across some wallpaper that you can lick, and then a fizzy lifting drinking room. And again, to the orders of Mr. Wonka, he says, don't drink it, but this is where Charlie and Grandpa Joe, they don't do as they're told. They drink the fizzy lifting drinks and they start floating up. And they're having fun and everything's going well up until the point till they get to the roof and they get to a fan with some blades, and it turns into some danger. And they got to stop themselves from floating up any further, or also get chopped up into pieces. And the only way down is to belch, and you get a scene here where they start belching and they start coming back down to the floor. And after getting back down, they return to the group. And they find themselves in a room with hens laying golden eggs. And this is where Veruca Salt says, Daddy, I want a golden egg, And this is where Mr. Salt goes, "All right, Wonka, how much do you want for one?" And then Mr. Wonka comes out and says, "Well, they're not for sale." But then Veruca gets into a strop and she starts running around. And then this is where she sings a song, "I Want It Now." And she jumps up onto the golden egg weighing machine, and the chute goes down, because if the egg isn't good, it will take you down into the garbage chute, and she falls down into it. And then this is where Mr. Wonka comes out and goes, "That's a bad egg." Mr. Wonka then calls one of the Oompa Loompas and he says, "Can you take Mr. Salts to the garbage room so he can go and get his daughter?" And then they move on. And then after this they go to the Wonka Vision room, and it's where Wonka bars can get teleported onto TV. And this spikes the interest of Mike TV. He says, "I want to do this, I want to be on TV," and he gets himself teleported, and he gets transported to being only a few inches tall, and he says, "Look everybody, I'm on TV." And then once again Mr. Wonka gets on his whistle, calls for his Oompa Loompas, and he says, "Can you take Mike TV away and his mum?" So he can somehow be returned back to normal size. So you are now just left with Grandpa Joe and Charlie. Mr. Wonka reassures Grandpa Joe that the kids will return back to normal, and he goes to his office and he says, "I've had a great day, it's been a fun day, it's been an interesting day." And he says goodbye to them, and that's it. And then he retreats to his office, and this is where Grandpa Joe goes in and sees Mr. Wonka and he says, "Well, what about the prize?" And then Mr. Wonka comes out and says, "You stole fizzy lifting drinks." And he gets his little bit of paper with a very small bit of writing, and he's reading the small print, and this is all in the office with everything that's been cut in half. And he basically screams at them both. And again, as I said earlier, with the spontaneity of this film, Charlie did not know that Gene Wilder was going to react like this. So Charlie Bucket's reaction here is, it's real. He's genuinely scared at this point as an actor. And he says to him, "You stole fizzy lifting drinks, so you are not going to get anything. So good day to you, sir." And then this is where Grandpa Joe goes, "Oh, you're fake, you're a fraud." He goes, "Come on, Charlie, let's go." And then Charlie turns around and he goes, "Mr. Wonka," and he gives him back the everlasting gobstopper. And then this is where Mr. Wonka, he takes hold of that gobstopper and he comes out and he says, "One good deed in a weary world." And this is where he turns around and he goes, "Charlie," he goes, you did it. And he goes, "What did I do?" And he goes, the prize. And he goes, "The chocolate." He goes, "Oh, the chocolate's just the beginning, come with me." And this is where they go into the glass elevator, and he says to him, "If you push any one of these buttons, you go sideways, upwards." And he goes, "Except that one." He's got this big red button, and then Charlie presses it, and they go up through the air, through the roof of the chocolate factory, and they go up into the sky. And this is where Mr. Wonka says to Charlie that in actual fact I've set all of this up. This whole day's been set up towards you because I knew you was the right kid to take this over. It's just that I was messing with all the other kids because, their greed and selfishness. He was just teaching them a lesson. He knew along that Charlie Bucket was going to be the good-hearted kid that he wanted to give the factory to. And then he said about Mr. Slugworth, he said, "Oh, Mr. Slugworth is a friend of mine, he was just setting it all up." And he said that basically you have given up that the boy who has nothing has given up everything just to do the good thing, and that's ultimately how Charlie has got it. So it ends really well. There's a really good moral to the story, and then the film comes to an end, and then you've got the closing song of World of Pure Imagination. And there you go, guys, that is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So as a roundup, guys, I mean, I generally try not to delve into politics or go too deep onto this show, but what I will say is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is a life lesson movie. There's bits of it you can take away with, particularly the selfishness and the greed, and I would say on you now, there are people like that I still meet today, and I think you are the kids from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory who are acting just like it. So yeah, it's kind of like the film is a bit of a lesson in life, and you can take a few bits away from it. But there you go, that is all I'm going to say about that. And whilst I'm talking about it, I suppose I've got to talk about the remake. You know, Tim Burton's good, he does some good stuff, but my own opinion here is that I didn't really like the remake. I wasn't a fan of it. I really didn't think it captured the heart that this movie has. But having said that, I appreciate that there might be people out there that did enjoy the remake. So, you know, it's somebody's art at the end of the day, somebody's works and all that stuff. It's fine. But myself, if someone asked me which one do you like, I really like the Gene Wilder one. I just think it's got it all. So there you go, guys. I think that is all that I need to say about that film. There you go. I think you could probably hear in my voice how much I love this film. So there you go. But that's it, guys. Like I say, I hope you enjoyed the show. Let me tell you about what I've got in the works for the show. So I've got a listener request from Dan Bone from Haunted Hill. He's asked if I could do The Substitute from 1996, so it's going to be in my next film that I'm going to be reviewing. And talking about Dan, he's going to be coming on the show with me for He-Man, The Masters of the Universe, which should be recorded in the next couple of weeks, so that should be dropping. And I've also got another guest coming onto the show, which is trying to get this all working together. It should be Ricky Morgan from the Howling Power Hour and Short Bus Cinema. He's also going to be joining me for Big Trouble in Little China, because that film is another one of those films that I think I need to have a guest on the show to talk about as well. So a couple of guests coming onto the show, some exciting stuff. And I've also got Jason and the Argonauts in the works. So it's busy, got a lot of stuff going on, but it's all good stuff. So look out for those episodes. And just to close the show up, just a little bit of admin. I'm a proud member of the Legion Podcast Network, so go and check out all the other shows on there. I'll play a promo at the end of the show. And you can find Bitesize Cinema on iTunes and YouTube and several other players on the internet. If you just punch in the Bitesize Cinema podcast, you'll be able to find it. And I've also got a Facebook page, so if there's anything you want to tell me about, or you want to talk about some of the shows or comments or any requests, put them on there, let me know. And that's it, guys. Like I say, keep it bite size, keep it safe, and I will see you soon.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Hellming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick 6 Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic Podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, 2 Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.